What's up, guys? We are back with another review, jumping into something very, very different for me, a third-party unlicensed figure. We are taking a look today at the GT Toys Dasin, whatever that means, Yusuke Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho. This is one of my all-time favorite anime series. It does have a licensed figure coming eventually at some point, but it's been so long that that's been announced, I just assume it's never going to happen. And I missed the earlier unlicensed figure, and this thing looks pretty amazing, so I finally decided to jump on it, not to mention the fact that it shipped within 2 weeks of being revealed, which is just the craziest thing. So we've got this guy here in like a pretty nondescript box. It's just a box with a window on it, his name, some sort of character down on the bottom, I have no idea, and then the back it just says Yu Yu. So not a whole lot when it comes to the presentation, but ultimately I'm here for the figure. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go. Out of the package are Yusuke Urameshi. Again, this is a third-party figure, and it's definitely outside of my wheelhouse. Like, I don't buy this stuff. And I'm not saying that in a negative sense. It's just I'm kind of familiar with a lot of what goes on with getting third-party made figures into production, how it's handled, how it's sold, all that stuff. So I bought it. I got him. Pretty happy with him. He's not a perfect figure. There is another Yusuke Urameshi figure that came out a year-ish ago from One Shot Toys. It's a little bit different. I feel like it's probably better in some ways. This one's probably better in some ways, but I'm very happy that I have this one. I kind of regretted not getting that other one, but eventually, you know, I kind of let it go because it was really hard to just try to track one down eventually. And then this guy popped up, and I think this is probably the one I would prefer to have anyway for a handful of reasons. Again, it's not a perfect figure. It does have some limitations when it comes to articulation, but honestly, this guy coupled with the figures that we know are coming just gets me excited to get like a core set of Yu Yu Hakusho figures really soon. So let's get started, see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. He's very similar to a lot of import figures. I mean, that's what it is, right? But he's very similar to like a Figuarts or something like that. But he's fully clothed, so that does present some challenges. He is kind of locked down just in many ways because of the fact he is fully clothed. You know, we see that with Mezco figures, but this is a little bit different because of the fact that this clothing is very form-fitting, which very much kind of works in the confines of the show. You know, his school uniform isn't necessarily overly baggy or anything, but this is kind of tight-fitting, especially the pants, so it does get in the way. So to start with, we've got our head. He can look really far up, and then he can look really far down as well. We've got, I mean, like some crazy tilt out to the side. The neck does move as well. And then, of course, you've got, you know, full 360 that you can bobble that head all the way around. We've got arms that go out at the shoulder. They go out basically all the way. You obviously are not going to be able to do a full 360 outwards, you know, rotation, but he can go out and he can go backwards. There is a butterfly joint in here. There's also a drop down. It's there. I'm not so sure how useful it's going to be, but it's there. We've got a bicep swivel. You know, that's something you have to play with because you've got to do it within the confines of the sleeve. You do have double jointed elbows, but of course the jacket's going to get in the way, but the range is still really good. So not necessarily a big problem. We do have ball hinges at the wrist. So they are, where's those hinges? There we go. So hinge up and down, and then of course rotation, but you can get it to go in any direction. We've got a torso cut, so he goes backwards. You can see his undershirt poking through there a little bit. We can go backwards really far, and then he goes forwards nicely as well. You've got good tilt side to side, and then you've got some rotation. He's not going to go all the way around because there's 2 layers of clothing in here, but you can still get him to twist really nicely. You know, there's an undershirt in there that's sort of tucked in. Now, the legs are where things are truly limited, and it's really just because the pants are kind of tight. Like, he just has some tight pants. So they go out only about, well, one leg will go out about this far, but both legs will only go out about this far together because they will start pulling on one another. Forward, you're going to go only about this far, which isn't too bad. Like, it's almost 90 degrees, but it's not. And then you've got really nothing kicking backwards. You do have a thigh cut up in there. You're going to have to play with it to make it work because, of course, it's covered, but it's there. Knees only go back about this far. They are double jointed, but they only go back about that far. Again, it's just the bunching of the pants. And then the ankles are pretty good when it comes to hinges, so they go backwards, they go forward, and then you've got a really good rocker here as well. I have seen some folks break theirs already, so buyer beware when it comes to the ankles. You know, just pay attention. If you think it's giving you problems, heat it up first. Use a hairdryer or something, heat it up just to make sure. But overwhelmingly, I'm pretty happy with the way this guy moves. He is limited. There's no doubt about it. It's something that happens with every clothed figure in some fashion, in some way or another. He might be a little bit worse off than others, but it's really just going to come down to the hip crotch area for me that's really hindered. The rest of it's fine. The arms are okay still. The torso works really well. Nothing impeding the feet. The knees are still all right. It's really just getting the legs out and upward that proves to be problematic. Otherwise, though, I do think he's pretty nice, moves really well. Everything else just seems relatively fluid. You might already know, however, that one of the main reasons that I wanted to get this figure is just because of what it is and what it represents and its aesthetics. So there is another third-party Yusuke figure out there, and it's different in some ways. Unfortunately, like, again, I don't have it to compare to, but I've seen it a million times, and it is a little bit different. The head sculpt is different. I think it's less accurate. It's a little bit shorter, I believe. The school uniform is a little bit darker, which, depending on what source material you're looking at, one may be more accurate than the other. The jacket closes on the other side for the one shot, which I think is correct. I do think this is wrong. I think the buttons should be on the left, on your left, but it should close the other way. If my quick research is any indication, it's ultimately probably not a big deal. But I do think this is, for the most part, a pretty decent looking figure. I'm happy with the color. The green looks nice. It's very consistent throughout. He's got pockets on his pants there, so you can get his hands in there. Ideally, what I would do is take the hands off and just put the joint in there, because there's no reason to actually shove a hand in the pockets. The jacket does have actual buttons on it, so these are little, I don't know, they're not metal, but they're plastic. Same for the cuffs on the sleeves. He does have a belt. I think this is probably the one area that I don't like the figure the most, because it's just kind of janky. It's like a little pleathery material, and it's mostly just for show. Like, it's not really doing anything. It's not holding the pants up. The pants are being held up by the fact that they're so damn tight. So you've got that, but it's just, there are some belt loops on it at least, so it is in there. It looks okay. It's just nothing special. What I do like is that the jacket is held on by magnets, which is really cool. So you can get it open and you can see the shirt in there. It's just like a sleeveless shirt basically, but it looks good, and you can take it off of him if you'd like, and maybe sling that jacket over his shoulder, or just have it open, or if you want to get him to look a little rough and tumble there for a minute. So you've got options when it comes to how you want to display him. Obviously, Yusuke has various looks in the show. I would say for the most part this is probably the most iconic, because I mean it's the original one, but there's a lot of other looks I'd like to see. I do think overall, though, the soft goods feel really nice. The body underneath feels okay. Like it feels very much like some basic body that they were able to throw into this. It doesn't feel like anything special, but ultimately you don't have to see it either, so it doesn't matter. All you really see are the head and the hands. And everything else here I think looks nice. The soft goods feel good. They feel kind of, like sort of a khaki material when it comes to the pants. Stitching looks okay. I've got no issues with like frayed edges or anything like that. Everything seems to fit him really nicely. Again, it's all pretty tight, but in the sense that like it's just fitting him. There's not any extra really when it comes down to this figure, which is a little bit of a downside when it comes to the articulation, but I think it makes for a pretty nice aesthetic, because there's no baggy or extra material kind of getting in the way, especially on the pants. There's nothing extra, which, your mileage may vary on whether you like that or not, but I kind of like it. And then ultimately, the one reason why, at the end of the day, I think I'm happier with this one than I would have been with the other Yusuke, the other one, the one-shot, is that I think this head sculpt is a lot better. It's a really, really nice, anime-accurate head sculpt. This particular one, right out of the box, has a very stoic, very kind of stern look. So you've just got the very forward-facing eyes, no real expression on the mouth, but everything is clean and crisp. And then I really like the sort of cartoony, cel-shaded blue stripe that runs across the hair, just to give it a little bit of depth and to break it up a little bit so it's just not like some black void. And the hair sculpt on its own, I think, does look pretty good. There is a couple seam lines here because of how this is all put together, but for the most part, I think it looks pretty nice. And overall, I am very happy with the way he looks, even if some of the aesthetics here, you know, specifically talking about the soft goods and how well they fit him in many ways, does impede his movement to a degree. Now, one of the big things I was really curious about was scaling, how this guy was going to size up to other figures. And I've said it a million times, sizing between lines has never really been a huge thing for me. I kind of like to keep my stuff separate. And ultimately, one manufacturer is not necessarily making their figures to work with any others. But everybody does it. So we had to check it out. And this was definitely the big one for me. I was really curious to see how this was going to stack up to Figuarts because, I mean, let's face it, a Goku Yusuke pairing, matchup, whatever you want to do, was definitely going to be something that I was going to tackle. I'm sure somebody else is going to do it too. And unfortunately, Yusuke is a little bit tall in that regard. Yusuke's like, what, 14 in the beginning of the show? So they don't really scale, but they also aren't super out of scale either. It's not perfect, but it also doesn't really work at the same time either. And then here he is with the new Ben Reilly Spider-Man for a sort of normal Marvel Legends. You can see he's a little bit shorter than your average Marvel Legends figure, but at the same time, Figuarts are always smaller than Legends, so he is a little bit in between. He's not overly bulky by comparison to Goku, but he is a little bit on the tall side. So that may throw a wrench into some plans of some folks. It's not a huge deal to me. I'd like to just bunch these Yusuke or Yu Yu Hakusho figures up together anyway, but it is what it is. And then maybe something a little bit bigger, but still Figuarts. So here he is with Cooler, which, I mean, this works. Just in a general sense, it works because he should be bigger. And then let's move Goku aside and do like a 7-inch scale figure from an entirely unrelated line. So here is the Masterverse Faker. Just give me an idea what he looks like next to something from a true 7-inch scale line. And then let's do a Mezco just because, well, he's handy. So let's do a Mezco because he's handy. Here he is with the Mezco 112 Collective Conan the Barbarian. So you can see he's actually kind of in line with him in terms of height, but still not necessarily in the same scale when it comes to like beefiness and bulk. They still seem a little bit out of scale. So they don't necessarily go with much of anything. I wasn't really expecting them to, honestly. And at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal for me. I would like to be able to put him with some DBZ stuff just for the fun of it. And you might be able to fudge it and make it work. But he is going to be a little bit out of scale if you want to throw him with, you know, most Figuart stuff. Now, as far as accessories goes, this thing is actually pretty stacked for a figure that honestly doesn't cost all that much in the confines of what we're getting here. There's a lot of stuff in this box, and ultimately, just about everything here is pretty nice. There's only one thing that I was kind of bummed about. So to start with, we do get a bunch of swappable parts. Pretty normal, right? So to start with, we've got fists on him in the box, and then there's 5 additional sets of hands. So you've got a set of kind of like clawed hands almost. I'm not really sure that's the best way to describe it, but that's what it looks like. A set of very open gripping hands, a set of closed gripping hands, a set of style pose hands, and then you get a set of spirit gun hands, which of course are the most important accessory for me when it comes to hands for this guy. And then we get a set of faces to replace the very stoic look that he has here. So you've got one that has him looking off to his right, your left, with a little bit of a smirk. You've got one where he's gritting his teeth, and then you've got one where he is screaming with his mouth open. So you've got a lot of options when it comes down to swapping this guy out. And then we get a few other little things. You get his school bag here, which is what the gripping hands are for, the more closed gripping hands are for. So it's just black with a few silver accents, but this looks good. I'm happy with that. And then we get our little Pooh here, which also looks really, really good. He's very small. You get him posed right and he'll sit on his head like he's supposed to, so you can get him up on his head. And this looks great. Sculpt is nice, paint is cleanly applied, colors look good, and he's not too big or too small either. I'm pretty happy with this guy. I was kind of surprised that they included something like this, but it's definitely nice to see. And then we get this. We get a base for this too. So you get this kind of pan down here. There's a little base here with some with some spots for these stands. So there's a stand for Yusuke himself, the bigger one, and then there's this smaller one here that you could obviously use with Yusuke. You also get another claw attachment for it, but it's got the spirit gun effect. And this is the thing that I was kind of disappointed by, because it's kind of a little rinky-dinky thing. Like, it's really small, and it just fits on this. Like, there's no way to put his finger in it. Like, you can't put the finger in there to actually have it sticking out of it, which I thought would have been really cool. Color looks good. And, you know, this definitely looks like he just blasted it, which I get the idea behind it, but I kind of wish it was a little bit bigger. So you've got that. This is probably the one thing I don't care for here. But this is kind of cool. So you've got this base as well, and I guess maybe these are all going to interlock when we get the other figures, because Kurama's already on the way, and Hiei is not going to be too far behind him. So maybe they'll interlock, and then there's three holes here to space your arms out a little bit better. So he does come with a bunch of stuff. Like, there's a lot in this box, a lot of different options for changing up the figure. You've got a few different things that he can hold in terms of the bag, and then of course the spirit gun effect, and then you've got Pooh here as well. So a little bit of a surprise for me. I was really not expecting all of this, but there's a lot of options with this guy, and for the most part, it's all really solid stuff. So overall, I'm very happy that I took the plunge on this third-party figure. I've wanted a really nicely articulated Yusuke figure, Yu Yu Hakusho stuff in general, for a really long time. You know, it's one of my favorite anime series. I love this show. I love this property, and I'm really happy to have this guy. He's not perfect. He is limited in many ways because of the soft goods, but I think the soft goods also look really good too, so it's a very double-edged sword for me. The figure in general, though, I think looks great. It does move well still. It's not perfect, but it moves well. And then he comes with a really solid array of accessories. Pooh, the school bag, faces, all those hands, the base. Really the only thing I don't like about the accessories is the fact that the spirit gun effect is kind of a rinky-dinky little thing. But otherwise, this is a really solid package for a really nice price. And let's be honest, it's really cool to have something that you didn't know about revealed and shipped within like 3 weeks. That alone was a huge positive for me when it comes to this one. So that's going to do it for this look at the GT Toys Dasin Yusuke Urameshi. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.